Hello, Carl Blau here, talking to you from Germantown, Philadelphia, to mention that when you support Low Profile, you not only help music lovers everywhere, but you also support the Markley Morrison family directly. A few ways you may do this are as follows. Donate to patreon.com/lowprofile. Subscribe to the show if you haven't. Give it a sweet rating. And tell your friends about the good, hard work Markley and his companions done on Low Profile. Now on with the show.
Hi, Markley here. Thanks for tuning in to Low Profile. This week's guest is Sean Schuster Craig, who performs under the moniker Jib Kidder. He grew up in the South and is currently based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Excuse me. Just kidding, that's not my phone. This is his song Helicopter from his 2014 album Pay to Play. Jib Kidder first made a splash when his song Window Dipper was featured on the TV show So You Think You Can Dance. Since then, he's primarily made sample-based music and incorporated that into his singer-songwriter style. He has a forthcoming album titled Jump the Gun, with release info to be determined. You can catch a sneak preview of that album later on this program. Sean's a deep thinker, and I'm excited to present this conversation. And before we hear that, I just want to encourage you to share this program with a friend if you enjoy it, and you can subscribe wherever you get podcasts if you want to hear new episodes as soon as they are released. Thanks for listening, and now here's my conversation with Sean of Jib Kidder. Sean, how do you do?
Can't complain.
Can you set the scene for me? Like, where are you in the world and what's your surroundings?
I'm in my above garage studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is super quiet because my kids are out of town, and my wife's downstairs doing something related to science, and it's a hot day. It's summertime. I'm eating cherries, drinking bubble water.
And where are you from, Sean?
So I was born in Louisville. I moved to St. Louis when I was maybe 10. Moved to Georgia when I was 13. Moved to Michigan when I was 18. Then moved to New York and then to San Francisco. From San Francisco to LA. From LA to Oakland. From Oakland back to New York. And from New York back to Michigan. So I feel like I'm from Georgia. I don't know. That probably doesn't make much sense.
Kind of depends on where you come of age or where you have the most, transformative experiences.
Middle school, high school was Georgia, so that makes some sense.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
I spent more years in Louisville, but those years, you get your operating system rewritten and you don't remember those first years of your life, and so I don't remember Louisville that well, but it feels familiar to me. But Atlanta, if I'm driving into Atlanta, when I start to get into the city, I feel like I'm coming home. So that's probably as close as it gets. But at the same time, I don't have any family there. Increasingly, I don't have that many friends there.
Have you ever had a burger there?
Have I ever had a burger in Atlanta?
No, in Louisville.
In Louisville. Well, there was some place that I went as a kid and had very tiny burgers in Louisville, but I can't tell you where that was because that was a long time ago. The only business I could remember from Louisville would have been a record store called Ear Ecstasy and a comic shop called Great Escape.
It's a good name for a comic shop.
I was super into Great Escape because even following my transition from comic books into music, like at my first experience buying music was just buying U2 tapes. I only listened to U2, Weird Al Yankovic and U2, and I could count on maybe a U2 tape or a Weird Al tape showing up at the comic book store. So it was an easy transition. And Escher shirts. So I was into like Infinity Gauntlet comic books, and The Great Escape had all of them, and I could walk to it. So, but I think we have a lot in common because, and tell me if this is not true, but my musical beginnings, my first musical experiences were church related. My dad was a church organist. My mom was like a cantor. This was a Catholic church. And also, my very first music I was into was Weird Al. And I think those might be both true for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done some research.
Well, I read
true.
part of an article. I read part of an article while I was in between eating dinner and setting up this microphone, so that I was at least a little bit prepared to have a conversation with you. And
yeah,
and here we are.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's very true. Yeah. You did music in the church as well?
Well, I mean, no, not really. I mean, well, I would say that my first experience as singing or something like that would have been singing along to the music in church, and I had a stint, and I think that my grandmother was next to me, and then said to my mom, "Oh, your son can really sing," and then she put me in the choir, and then I remember being in the choir. I did the first time I was in the choir, in the first church service, I did the Star Trek. Is it like a Vulcan hand thing? Is that what it is? I can't remember the context, but
I
know, where you do the V with your
about.
hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I just had my hand like the V and was just holding it up for the entire service, and my mom was so horrified. I can't remember if that was the end of my choir experience but she was pissed. But later as a teenager, I did get hooked up with a gig like playing. And this was like in St. Louis. I got paid a decent amount of money to play classical guitar for the like youth mass or something like that, and that was a good gig. I got paid.
Nice.
But yeah, my parents were musicians. They were into classical music. My mom had been a stage manager at the Kentucky Opera, and she did some singing. She was like an understudy in the Kentucky Opera as well, and had some opportunities to sing. And I think that she was singing in an opera when I was in utero, and she fell into the orchestra pit, and they thought I was dead. And
oh wow.
I was not. I was alive. And I hated opera for such a long time. And then I got into these illustrated biographies of composers. The first one I read was Tchaikovsky. And I got super into Verdi operas and like Rigoletto and some other ones. And then now I've come around, and I had to learn that it's Italian opera that's so good. And Italian music in general, I've been super in love with Italian music. Let's see, I went out to the one show I played last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago, but me and my friend Ben Lawless, rest in peace, we flew out to LA, and I found this compilation of recordings from the 70s of like 100-year-old, people at the end of their life playing these instruments that were soon to be extinct. And that music is so deep. That was a highlight of my trip to LA, was discovering that. Another highlight for me was sort of being in LA, and because LA is kind of where it's probably where I would choose to live if there was no other forces in my life but my own will. And it was kind of nice to be in LA and not be loving it, not be so head over heels in love with it as a place, and have a reality check and be like, this wouldn't be so great. Because when I did live in LA, I was super in love with it, and I didn't have any contact with any of the things you might complain about it, because what had happened was I was working in a hospital kitchen, and I was an alcoholic, and I had just gotten a big check from the Fox network for having 45 seconds of my music on So You Think You Can Dance.
Yeah, I just watched that last night for the first time, and it was pretty cool. I've never seen that show, but I just thought that whoever was behind that choice, do you know if that was the dancer's choice or?
I know the story there, which is that a former contestant of the show and a choreographer, I think, went onto an online forum and crowdsourced, do you guys know anything with computer sounds? And I think that there was a vacuum there that my song filled. There wasn't something else that was easily danceable, and then there was someone knew my song, and then that choreographer, nice. I think, would have showed the actual probably turned the contestant onto the song, But yeah, I mean, at the point when that happened, I needed some kind of break because I wasn't doing anything. I had a real hard time figuring out sort of how to follow up that record.
So we're talking about All on Y'all.
All right? On Y'all. It had been such an intense experience making that record, and I mean, how to put it, like, it was its own world, the record itself, and it wasn't like I was making a genre of music and I was gonna permanently be in that world.
Wasn't like that. Wasn't like that. Now, player. Now, homeboy.
I had been almost only listening at the time to, I guess, what people would call like region rap, like underground rap that was really specific to these different southern cities. I mean, Memphis, but also New Orleans and Atlanta too, and
different regions,
and the sort of, I mean, for me, I was coming from a perspective of really being obsessed with people who made their made and recorded and did their music themselves, without anyone polishing it up. And and I discovered stuff like, I remember discovering Daniel Johnston when I saw Kids, when I was 12 or 13, and just being like, whoa, now wait a second, what is this? And it was a real similar experience to discovering some real underground southern rap, that like DJ Jubilee from New Orleans, but also early DJ Paul and Juicy J stuff from Memphis, and then a little bit later DJ Spanish Fly, who was kind of a predecessor of those guys. And that stuff had such a unique perspective on making the most of from so little, and to make really huge music with really limited means, So I was immersed in that, and I was listening to it all the time, and I had to make music too. I mean, I was so I came from a background of being taught how to play guitar from sort of a bluegrass dude, and it at some point it became a question of like, I'm not going to I'm not going to make rap music. That's not that's not something I have any particular insight into, but at the same time, I can't help but be influenced. You know, just like you dream
Right.
about the images you see in a book before you go to sleep. That, you know, I had to have some way to process it and make my own music out of it.
I was looking at your bio that's online,
Mhm.
and you talked a lot about collage there.
I mean, for me, collage as a practice started visually, and I think earlier on it was uncertain whether what was going to take over for me, music or art, and you know, and when I was a kid, the art was more front and center, and which I think is more about like it's common to be able to draw before you can play a music with any, you know, play a musical. It takes a lot longer to learn how to play a musical instrument than to hold a pencil, or maybe not even that. Maybe that society encourages you to master the pencil much faster than the music. But I sort of started in the visual realm, and music took over after that. And by the time I was really getting deep into writing music, I already was doing a lot of visual collage, and so I think it was a natural translation of oh, you know, I know how to do this in this other realm. What you know, which I think, you know, more than anything was actually about having a deep need for expression and a deep interest in creation, and not a lot of necessarily just like inborn artistic skill.
So you have moved a lot. I was wondering if your geographic locations maybe had different, like, could you describe where you were when you first started Jib Kidder, and sort of like general idea of what Jib Kidder was in that region?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't think that it hasn't been that coherent. There's been I could have used many different aliases for projects that sound different, and I don't
Sure.
know exactly what caused me not to, but I think it had to do with some real ideas about identity, and some real skepticism about what we think of as identity, and there's a lot of attachment that people put to there's a lot of thoughts that people have about identity in music and about region in music that I think are misleading. But I was recording, first discovered home recording in my parents' house in Georgia, and first used the name Jib Kidder once it came to me in a dream, and I made some CDRs, mostly with toy keyboards. At the time, I was super into Pee Wee Herman, and I think probably if you had asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I would have said it would be great to make music for a children's television show. I didn't, you know, I didn't want to be a rock band necessarily, but I got super
Right,
into
yeah.
using toy keyboards, just like exclusively toy keyboards, and then I kind of discovered the dumbest, most simple MIDI sequencer you could possibly use, which was called Pianito Micro Studio. And that kept me busy for a while. I mean, that stuff, I can't. It's hard for me to listen to now. But Pianito Micro Studio kept me busy, and so I was in Atlanta in my first apartment, you know, as an emerging adult, and smoking a ton of pot, and smoking a ton of cigarettes, and making a sort of general MIDI rock opera about methamphetamine. Everybody I knew from high school was just being decimated by methamphetamine, and I kind of processed that experience by making this pretty complicated rock album, rock opera, rather, called Super Jib Kidder versus the Squids. And that was kind of where it started. And then I moved to Ann Arbor, and it was a while before I found my way out of the general MIDI sequencer that was, because, I was super into arranging. I really wanted to write music for a lot of parts. And so when I discovered something that was just like, almost like just using the Finale software to compose, it really kept me busy for a while. And the results are, if you ask me, completely unlistenable. But it kept me busy because I had a lot of thinking about part writing that I got to explore in that way. And it took me a while to get out of it. And then I spent some time kind of trying to learn how to make, use more playing of real instruments, but it was sort of a learning curve for getting good sounds out of I'm barely happy with some gear around and much more knowledge of acoustics. Like I'm still not necessarily happy with the sound I get when I record a mandolin, but it's worlds away from when I was young, and so I couldn't really figure that out. And then there was a little bit of stagnation until I discovered, I can record straight from vinyl records, and that sounds beautiful. It's rich, it's complete, it's not leaving anything wanting. This is great. And so then it took me a while of using every kind of recording I could get my hands on before I was comfortable again to start trying to record sounds of my own. And then it was kind of a long time before I got comfortable with that. And then now it's at the point where I can easily meld both practices. But then there's been a radical change recently, which is kind of towards the start of this pandemic. I had a health problem, and I, for the first time in my life, stopped smoking weed. And all of a sudden I had these radical dreams, out-of-body dreams, lucid dreams, and then it was pretty hard to justify giving those up. And I also felt way less crazy, way less anxious, way less depressed. And so so I'm sticking with it. And there's some real changes to my music brain from it. But the little bit of work that I have done since this started has been extremely stripped down and really simple, like 2 tracks, guitar and voice. And I think I have some investigations to do in that realm for a while.
Wow.
A limb for locomotion, digits of a bird on you, lonely old sensation, flow of wind I glide on you, I'm flying information, throwing water onto you, always on vacation, shape of wing or strength of claw and illustration. Who am I talking to? Illustration. Maybe flying is a limb for locomotion. Digits of a bird.
I mean, it took me a long while to appreciate lyrics. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't really listen to them. I mean, and I think that comes out of the first band I was exposed to was U2, and U2 has some really beautiful I was reading this metal producer in Tape Op, and he was talking about how he's like, people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think that underneath Joshua Tree, there's just a beautiful ambient album that someday someone will be able to, pull out from under there. But yeah, U2's got the worst lyrics of any band that's ever been around. And so I think that when U2's in your DNA like that, you tend to discount lyrics, and that's my justification. But maybe it was also that the abstract aspects made so much sense to me, and music just inherently made so much sense to me that I was thinking about it in a different way, and I wasn't thinking about it as a vehicle for some sort of for words. But when I discovered Gertrude Stein, that changed for me, and for the first time I saw an example of something that I really related to my own experience of music, which was the way that she could say a very specific and very deep thing with common words, with just absolutely familiar words, which to me I kind of relate to. I remember being in composition class for music, and the composition teacher being really critical of me, what I was doing with a diatonic scale, and just being like, you can play some diatonic notes and it sounds pretty, and that was actually my reaction to that was I'm going to show this. And that's kind of how the next thing I did was to mix gangster rap and the university's gamelan. I borrowed the keys to the University of Michigan's gamelan, and I lugged my desktop computer in there, and I played that note for note.
Don't you try to step to me because you feeling like a killer. In my eyes, I see bloody skies. Dump you with no ripple. Don't you try to step to me because you feeling like a killer. In my dump you with no ripple.
To me, there's you take a 7-note scale, and despite a long and rich history of people changing the order of those notes, you can still do a real novel recombination of those few notes and go to a very deep place with it, and that's what I saw in the Gertrude Stein stuff, like Tender Buttons and other stuff in Geography and Plays. Like, in a way that's really was radical for me. I could see how this parallel between notes and words that opened up words for me, and so now, having this sort of collage perspective, now I can use that where it's just words or words and one instrument, and for a long time I've wanted to do that, and in a series I did of etudes was a way that I kind of zeroed in on doing collage with a single instrument, and so I think finally I'm getting to the point where I can use my methods with and have a very little amount going on instead of a lot going on, because on a lot of the records there's a lot going on.
Sure, yeah. And you've had a tendency to sort of bring it all together. The first thing I ever heard by you, your Steel Guitars LP, an album that I had wished I had made some years earlier. I was always thinking about how fun it would be to make an album kind of like in the vein of the Avalanches, but just using classic country records.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of like, and you pulled it off, sir. You like really, and then some. It's just really nicely done. And it's just like really heavy-handed on the hip hop production, while like keeping it really twangy the whole time.
I know at some point I was like, well, I should do the redneck follow-up, the All on Y'all, the redneck version, the country version, and I got really deep, and I was doing pretty deep research for All on Y'all, and I did the same for steel guitars, and there was 2 different pedal steel records by Jimmy Crawford, but then also this sort of Nashville session player supergroup called the Nashville Bar Association. Those records are so incredible. But the Jimmy Crawford, both of them had a pun about steel in the title. I think Steel Crazy was the second one, but I can't remember what the first one was called. But yeah, those records in particular really blew my mind. But also I really got into early Conway Twitty and Roy Orbison too, kind of around the same time, and really got into that music, and that kind of helped me a little further down the line with a return to vocal music and making vocal music and stuff. But it's Steel Guitars is interesting. It's been interesting who's been into that record. Alex Gray, that psychedelic painter Alex Gray. I think he did the cover to In Utero, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But some other people too. It's been interesting. Oh, you know what? It was funny. Some kind of very boring band. Let me think of what they're called. Okerville River. You know that band?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, there's no reason you'd listen to them. But a guy from that band, a birder guy who was in that band, walked into a cafe in New York, and he heard Steel Guitars, and he was like, "Oh, these are my favorite records. I got to reach out to this guy." And he asked me to go on tour with him, and I said, "Well, I can't do that. But let's play a show." And I opened up for his polished NPR band in New York, but it was my favorite kind of show, just the best show I could hope for, which is playing a show for a bunch of squares and doing something to and open their head a little bit is just the best live experience I can imagine. So the guy from I can't remember what his band was called, but the sold out show from the guy from I think they were really upset when I smoked out the green room, and I think they found my banter really distasteful and smelled bad. And it was so fulfilling, though. The audience they were paying attention because it surprised them, and it can be hard to surprise people, and especially if you make experimental music, you're often performing for people who it's hard to surprise, who've been around the block at least in terms of downloading a bunch of things they've half listened to. But I haven't ever, I think that people often do the same show 50 times and take it all across the country, and I've kind of never done that. It's always been a constant change, and pretty erratic in terms of quality, and no one gives me shows anymore, so I don't have the ability to flex that, but it would be fun if I did. In the meantime, I will not be doing streaming concerts, so that's not coming.
Okay, I will not write that in my calendar.
It's bad when I have to Zoom the pediatrician. That's when I just want to die. Why can't we just have a phone call? The phone's hard enough. I don't want to infinite jest with you, man. That's God.
Yeah, this isn't the Jetsons. Come on.
Yeah.
She I'm told is a bird out here. Never let me know, so I become my own one. Aside from truth, my own impiles and nightmares. Appetite for love. I see you in the night time. Alive though born in mud, in waves.
Well, so we're talking about live shows. You've had a few different bands along the way, yeah?
I've never had a natural. The most natural band I ever had was an emerging band, somewhat recently, with my friend Ben Lawless, and the story there was that we played music together when we were young, and a lot of bands, they start playing together when they're young because it's important to the kind of bond you get with people when you're still plastic and you're still adjustable. That's where you really end up in a psychic situation. And so my friend Ben, who I had mentioned, he found himself on his journey. He found himself a homeless alcoholic, and he showed up at my house, and I don't think we really had too much of a conversation about it, but he knew the door was open for him, and he showed up at my house, and I told him that he could live with me, with my family, as long as he wasn't going to drink. He could live here, and he wouldn't need to pay any rent or whatever, and we could play music. And one thing I know that's good for Ben is playing music. And so then every day he would be sleeping, and I would just wake him up, and I would just say, Ben, we're playing music right now. And it worked. And every single day he'd play with me. And at first his drumming was not good, but it got good very quickly. And me and Ben were both writing our own parts and exploring our own territory, and no one was outplaying the other one, and we were enjoying the same things, about having a different. I mean, it's very interesting, the experiences I have with Ben, because you know how you can look at a 2D drawing of a 3D cube, and you can perceive it being two different kinds of boxes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And you can kind of control it, and you can actually flip your perception back and forth between those two different cubes. But so always
It's
with
inverted or
yeah, exactly,
poking out at you. Yeah.
and always with rhythmic thinking, me and Ben would have these different perspectives, and then there would be things that would pull one of us to see the other one's side of things, and it made us laugh. It was a lot like tripping, and I've had experiences tripping where you feel something that is straight and it feels curved at the same time, and you can hold on to that ambivalence, and or if that's not the right word, maybe, but you can hold on to that, to both sides of that, and that's such a powerful experience, and it's such a powerful all around, whenever you can perceive a person as both bad and good without and just hold on to those things, and whenever you can perceive the future as horrible and beautiful, and really not vacillate between the two, but contain them at the same time, it's a powerful experience. And we had that a lot playing, and we almost got good, and we were deep immediately, but we were on our way to getting good, and Ben started drinking again, and we went our separate ways, and then he killed himself. So
Oh my God.
that was as close as I got to a natural band, and there's been me having friends who are like me, and make music in their own self-made language, who sort of agreed to spend a lot of time learning my music, or there's also been more adept players, sort of more of like music student type, people who really have chops, who have been able to do shows with me with very little instruction, because they can play well. But no, there's never been a proper band, other than, the closest it came was, like I mentioned, with Ben, and it would be nice to have it would be nice to have a band. But
Yeah.
Ben was one of the guys who taught me how to play music, and my guitar teacher Jimmy was another guy who taught me how to play music. So listen, Jimmy, if you're out there and you're listening to this episode of Low Profile, give me a phone call. Let's talk. Even if you don't make much sense, give me a call. I miss you.
Goes out to you, Jimmy.
But yeah, Jimmy taught me how to play guitar, and Ben taught me about syncopation, and both those guys and Jimmy's little brother Ben and their friend Matt, they were older guys. They turned me on to a lot of great music, and that had a huge influence on me, and they all had a big part in shaping who I became, and shaping my tastes, and here we are.
Ben wakes up for a while. I don't really want my life. Give me something that fits. Do you know the raccoon sound? While man working on the chips. Float around this ghost town. In something, let me see. Like to chew 3 trees. Fruit time rock, let me out. When you extract my sound. Tell me what you know now. Anybody sitting on nails. Tic-tac, time to go around. Anybody see my dad? Superposition of the duck. Jokes aren't funny, they're dead. Death makes my life sucks. Hit with the chick club. Done with the unlucky man. Find a way to reach my speed. Won't last long, won't keep. Find a way while I weep.
Yeah. Is that song Benny about? The guy we were talking about?
You're referring to my unreleased song Benny on my unreleased album Jump the Gun. It is about Ben, yeah.
Are you interested in talking about your upcoming album?
Well, let me back up, because after Ben died, I kind of went into a cave, and in that cave, all I did was listen to music from Mozambique. There's a genre of music called marabenta, really joyful music, but that came out of a lot of pain, and so that was super inspiring to because you hear a lot of tortured music in this culture that comes out. People in pain make this music that sort of wants to bring you down to their level, or to sort of wallow in the pain, and to have this beautiful Mozambique music have such a different take was really it was healing for me, but it also it really put some problem-solving formal solutions in my mind, and that stuff really opened up my head somewhere. So something happened where all of a sudden I was able to solve problems that had got me stuck before, and with that new skill, I had accumulated over the course of 10 years or so a variety of beats or skeletons of songs, or sort of unfinished instrumentals that I liked better than anything else I'd made. But despite liking them better, or maybe because I liked them better, I was unable to complete them. And at that point, all of a sudden, I was able to complete them. And in a really rapid and natural way, I made a whole record out of them. And so, it was this greatest hits of incompletion, this best moments that never happened, and the process of finishing them was so smooth. So it went that way with other people too. So I was really obsessed with this idea of, for the cover art, I usually make the cover art, and I'm a very visual person, but I'm not a very skilled artist. So, when you brought up steel guitars, it's very interesting about that record, because I spent as much time on the cover as I did on the record. But with the record, my work on the record was skilled and adept, but my work on the cover was just was comical, and my wife was at the time. She was not my wife at the time, but we lived together, and she would make fun of it. She would just see me obsessing over this fucking cover and laugh at me.
Man.
But I had this idea, the cover for Jump the Gun, the new record. I really wanted, I wanted a Where's Waldo vibe. My kids were getting into Where's Waldo, and I was looking at some of the action on there, and I was obsessed with it and loving Where's Waldo, but also Bosch, and thinking about, these just big triptychs with just so much a flurry of demented activity. But then someone hit me up on Instagram, and I happened to look at their page, and that happened to be the artist Jake Tobin, and I was looking at his page, and then all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, he's on that Bosch shit. He's on that he's doing that Where's Waldo thing. And I sent him a DM like, hey, I was thinking about, I was trying to make this cover art, and then I looked at your page, and it's exactly what I was thinking of. And within 24 hours, without really coming up with any plan together, we riffed on ideas a little bit, and I can't remember exactly how it went, but within such little time, he just made the cover, and it really came together in a way that I believe in, and it's a culmination of a very long line of work. I mean, I think that I've always been really trying to learn and always never really satisfied, and always trying to find a new method, and always trying to find a new way because I think I'm ADHD, and I need a lot to be excited, and I want more. I want more stimulation, and
you described your music to me as ADHD psychedelia when I
see, that makes
I jokingly
No.
I jokingly asked you what genre you were.
See, I read this book, and it was kind of written by a sort of like celebrity psychological hack, and so I don't want to advocate it necessarily, but the book was called ADHD: A Hunter in a Farmer's World, and when I read that, I was like, holy shit, this is a book that's talking about me. I'm a hunter in a farmer's world, man. I was born to hunt, and so in pursuing creative and being in the creative field, I necessarily came out with a way to hunt and a hunting method of working, and like any natural hunter, I kind of sleep with one eye open, and I'm ready to jump up for a threat, and I'm always taking in the whole scene, and if a fly buzzes by, I definitely notice it, it just went so far to explain where I was coming from, and so I really I do think it's a powerful part of my aesthetic is that I'm a hunter, and that I'm willing to invest a lot in order to succeed in that hunt, and to catch the metaphorical rabbit or whatever it is, or to get that fish in my hand. I'm willing to do a lot, but at the same time, there's a lot of sort of more farmer type shit that I can't pull off at all. And I believe this record. I believe in it. It's not. I mean, I make a lot of records. I don't always believe in them this much, and so I don't want it to get lost. I don't want it to not be listened to, and so that's what I meant about. It's hard for me to not be pessimistic about it. I finished it at just the time where it's going to be a pretty tough sell, and and I hope I can get it. I'm gonna put it out myself, I've never.
People got their ears on these days.
I don't know. I think they've got their ears off. I think people are used to listening to music at work, and they're not at work, and so they're just at home. And I think they got their Netflix on, and I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe people will hear it somehow. But I'm gonna make a record. I'm gonna make a vinyl record, and that'll feel good because I haven't made one for a while. I made, after the Domino record, Teaspoon to the Ocean. Let's see, they did a 7-inch too, and then I had an interesting record. The last record I made was by a label called Care Of, where they send you a check in the mail to download it, and that was kind of a dark dance record. It's called New Works for Realistic Mixer. The one person who reviewed it did a lot of philosophizing about what I might have meant through the poetic expression realistic mixer. But it's a Radio Shack mixer. I'm sure you've seen one. It says realistic on it, and
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I used to make it. But the titles are all fly species, so those are all. There's that Aphex Twin album, Drug Use, where it looks like all the titles are nonsense, but half of them are Welsh, and so it's the old IDM trick of fluid interplay, but fluid boundaries between nonsense and sort of obscure sense, and it looks like the titles are not, but no, the titles are flies. Each one's a different fly.
And your wife, you said something in an email about how she's a fruit fly scientist.
My wife is a fruit fly scientist, so she can do brain surgery on flies, and if she needs to tie them down with a single human hair to do it, she can do that.
Now, I can't even imagine what the tools must look like for that job. Can you even see
Oh,
them?
no, you're familiar with all the tools, pipettes, slides, microscopes.
Wow. Yeah, I was imagining like a tiny hospital bed,
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about. I honestly know a shocking little about it, even despite my intimate relationship with flies. But that was the last time I made a record, so maybe it's been 4 years. I love to make records, and I felt guilty about them because they seemed like some kind of eco-crime. But now I learn that vinyl records are the greenest medium for music. Streaming is an absolute disaster in terms of energy consumption, and the cloud is not a cloud. The cloud is just huge hidden infrastructure that's wildly expanding the amount of energy that we consume at exactly the point in time where we need to be doing the opposite. So it's somewhat of a relief to know that, and so I can put out records without feeling guilty about it, except for the truth is that people will be listening to it in both ways, and so it's couldn't be more of a environmental disaster.
Well, I'm thinking about playing Do a Bunk.
I love that's my personal favorite. I'm glad you said that because no one's converged around that yet, and that one's special to me. And I think about if you've ever heard of grapheme color synesthesia. I code songs with color, and for me that's the purple song on the album, which is also my favorite color. So yeah, that one sticks out for me a lot. I love that one. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you brought that one up. Do a Bunk.
Ding dong, do the trick, make me laugh. Dice, cast, dice, tries to pigeon. Dirty conch, dig a pit, early bird, drop dead. Even odds call the call me Sean. Get spun, go spinning, spinning. Bury me, dead me, little wild bo peep, go sleep with a weapon, a weapon. Bubble pops, watch cops, worthwhile, big pile, hot sound, cut a record, record. Off topic, in season, been seen, been searched, won't rhyme, no reason, reason.
Love it. I can't wait for Jump the Gun to come out. It's real exciting. There's one thing that we've left out, and I sort of I reached for it earlier, but we didn't get there, and it's something I like to ask a lot of our more esteemed guests. And I've never asked anyone this way, but you're familiar with the structure of a haiku, I'm sure.
X syllables, Y syllables, X. I don't know the numbers there, but
I think it's 575.
Okay.
So this is a mental exercise, and also a little something about yourself. Is how do you like a burger?
How do I like a burger in a haiku? Okay, yeah. I got it. Yeah. So with a big salad, with a very big salad, with a salad.
I love it.
Yeah, so we did
great.
that. We did that. That was good.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me and telling me everything.
Dude, thank you for calling me. Thank you for wanting to know what the hell's going on in my mind, because it's fun to tell you my secrets, and I hope that you have a great week.